Hi everyone, thanks for making the left turn for today, Sunday, September 15th, 2013. I'm George Farrar, and welcome to another Sunday on the Farrar Report. I want to do something different on the Farrar Report today. There's a lot going on, as always, and I expect there's going to be a lot of dismal news over the next several months with the anticipated showdown in Congress between President and the Tea Party Republicans over the government shutdown and the potential default brought on by the debt ceiling crisis that will be approaching us later this fall. And of course, we have the Syria debacle. We have the diplomacy right now in the works. A deal has been reached in Geneva, but I don't expect to see a resolution to Syria anytime soon. And I have my eye on these things, and I'll discuss them briefly later in our report. But what I'd like to do right now is talk with you about something that is positive, something great, and something that's not just an American accomplishment, but I think that we can look at as a global accomplishment, something that all of us throughout the world can be proud of. In 1977, I was 3 years old. As you can see by this picture, I am a toddler. Toddling around with my grandmother and mother. And it was in 1977. And also in that year, not that far away from Jacksonville, Florida, a bit of a ways down south, in Florida, in Cape Canaveral, NASA launched a space probe called Voyager 1. They also launched Voyager 2. There were other launches. And this Voyager 1, though, here in 2013, has made the news. And so I want to talk about this accomplishment, something that we can all be proud of in this global community, I would say. I guess you could say we are on, here on YouTube and on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you're seeing me. And again, I thank you for watching. I thank you for joining me today. And it's an amazing world in which we live. And I want to talk about Voyager, so I'll do that for several minutes, and then I'll talk a little bit about what else has been going on in the world. So it was announced by NASA this past week that the Voyager 1 space probe has finally entered interstellar space. Now, there's some disagreement about whether Voyager 1 has actually left the solar system, but I think we can agree at this point that it's really going out into the deeper reaches of space, and where we have anticipated, hopefully, that it would go when it was launched, and has been successful. I think it is one of the more successful space programs we had, were these space probes. And what's neat about it is what's called the golden record. And as you can see, it is a record, basically, a audio-visual presentation. Almost one might say a PowerPoint presentation for anyone who might encounter this space probe out there. There's a lot of jokes about UFOs, space aliens, abductions. You see a lot of trivialities out there on television. I enjoy some of those shows, but let's talk about the real deal. Let's talk about our electronic ambassador out there in the great beyond. Dispatched from Cape Canaveral with messages from our President of the United States at the time, Jimmy Carter, as well as messages from the United Nations Secretary General at the time, Kurt Waldheim, and greetings from in many different languages from all over the world, along with various sounds of nature and music, and also pictures of the most what people would say would be mundane things, but would be fascinating to aliens. And also, we look at what else is included in the Golden Record, which is an attempt to communicate, not just through a presidential message written in English or spoken in English, but also in the language of mathematics and measurement. And I think in that way, it is probably the most fascinating device we've ever launched, because we are putting out there the ability to demonstrate that we are people that you can talk to. So I'm incredibly fascinated with this accomplishment. It doesn't get a lot of play in news. I've seen it out here or there, but you don't get a lot of science news and things like that out there, maybe on CNN, where they're myopically focused on certain things, or other networks. They're more focused on the day-to-day earthbound news events. But I was very intrigued by seeing this in my news feed and seeing it on some of the different websites. And so I want to share that with you today and express my great enjoyment as a human being in this accomplishment, and my hopes that one day maybe our electronic ambassador will reach some distant capital and convey a message that we are people you can talk to. Despite all of our disagreements here on Earth, it's something that I think that we've at least put our best face forward, our best voice forward, and provided, even though it was, now I guess you could say many years ago, we've at least put this out there, and who knows where it will go. We know that our links to it will go dark around 2020 to 2025, but it will be out there, and it will be for it to be wondered upon, and who knows. But now back to more earthbound realities, such as the Syria debacle. They couldn't get the votes in Congress, so they were kind of forced to work out some diplomacy. Secretary Kerry went over to Geneva very quickly, and seems to have worked out a deal with the Russians, the power really that has the greatest influence in Syria, as Syria has been their satellite state, really, at least a sphere of influence more than anything, since at least, I would say, the mid-1950s and onwards. And so now it's expected that the Syrians, amidst the civil war, are going to have a one-week deadline to reach a agreement of what their inventory is. So they'll have to come up with an inventory. They'll have to, amongst themselves, count the amounts of chemical weapons they have. I suppose where they're stored, and what the contents and volume is, and canisters. I don't know all that's involved, but they have to do it in a week. That's one heck of a deadline. They have to do all this amidst the Civil War, and they're going to be doing all this amidst this sort of ongoing civil war that's going on. It's been happening since 2011, with no clear end in sight. And it's expected that these chemical weapons will be transitioned over to international controls in the time span of a year. Of course, we all remember what happened with Iraq, at least specifically with the what I call Iraq II, the second Iraq War, and how the United Nations was sent over, and there were inspections done, and there was evidence presented, and there was this process, but that was not enough. So, folks, I have my eye on Syria, and so suffice it to say, I don't think this will at all be the last report that I do on Syria. And for those of you who recall, a week or so ago, I talked about the history of Syria, or at least I'll be discussing the history of Syria, and I'll be doing that as events draw closer to actually what will, I think, ultimately will be the end result. So don't be too optimistic. Be skeptical and keep your eyes open, and do like I do. Keep an eye on Syria and on these other things that we talk about. You'll be surprised. I think that there was no way this could go to Congress for a vote. And certainly I hope you enjoyed the rally that I attended, protested at, and covered, and you see it right out here on the Left Turn Network. So I hope you liked it. So one more thing. I feel like Columbo. Just one more thing. The economy. You know, with all the things that were going on at the end of last month and the beginning of this month, I really couldn't do my traditional analysis of the jobs report, but suffice it to say, I have some concerns. And I'll be focusing on this down the road. I'd like to talk about one concern that I have, and that is a statistic that is coming up as we look at what are these new jobs that have been created over the past year, over at least since January. And I've looked and I keep seeing the figure 59%, and that is the number of the percentage of our new jobs that are part-time jobs. Now, there's a different explanation for that. Some would say that some of this is being brought on by corporations and companies trying to avoid the impact of Obamacare. And yes, if you look at part-time jobs, you'll see a big spike in part-time jobs in the month of June. So I've got my mind open on a lot of this stuff, but I will have to say right now things are very soft. And you know, I've talked about the marshmallow economy some time ago. If you stick a fork in a marshmallow, what comes out? It comes out with goo. So I think that's what we're getting right now, a whole lot of goo. And I'll have to tell you, I express my disappointment not only with Congress but also with our the lack of vision out there in the private sector, and the attempts to kind of really just avoid any sort of civic responsibility. But that actually has consequences later on. They think it'll have political consequences, but actually it actually does hit the bottom line. It sure as heck hits the bottom line in the consumer, in the consumer's pocket. So what am I looking to over the next several weeks? Well, we've got this anticipated showdown between the White House and Congress, particularly the Tea Party nuts, particularly in the House of Representatives, and then there's some crazies in the Senate, of which Ted Cruz is one. And so we're going to start hearing a lot about that. You know, as I said prior weeks, I've said I'm not concerned as much about the government shutdown threat as I am about this debt ceiling debacle. Because I remember August 2011, I was right here at this computer, on this camera, and you know what? Maybe I was even talking to you in August 2011, talking about this horrible thing that was happening as our credit rating got dropped down as a country. You know, it really is quite a disappointment of the void in leadership in our Congress. And then again, you know, here we are. I've contrasted right now talking about, what have I talked about in this report? I've talked about a great accomplishment that came out of the 1970s, that keeps on going. It keeps on and it was a government program that was successful. Voyager. The Voyager series of deep space probes. And then what else did I talk about? I talked about diplomacy to prevent some sort of nonsensical war, of which the reasons for it are suspect and shadowy at best, and at worst an absolute just what can I do? All I can do on this is just express my disgust with the whole thing. At least the people spoke up, and the representatives and senators in Congress at least listened. But we'll see how long that holds out. And then what else we talk about? The marshmallow economy. So I do have hope for the future. I do. And I know that we have dark times ahead. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to come out here on doom and gloom. We're going to talk about the facts, and we're going to wade through the truth. And, you know, but I'm just setting the stage for where we're headed. Kind of like that probe. We're going off into somewhere we've never been. And unfortunately, we have no reassuring messages coming out of Washington and the United Nations, maybe like we may have in the 70s. least in that regard. I want to thank you for watching the Farrar Report. I do it every Sunday. I've got the Left Turn Network on Facebook. I've got the Left Turn News Groups. The Jack's Left is on Twitter. Jack's Left, THEJAXLEFT. Also have another channel. Other than the George Farrar channel, I have the Jack's Left channel on YouTube. So please check it all out and tell me what you think. Let me know what you think about this video. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. See ya next Sunday, if not sooner. Later.